questions you'll ask.
Of any blood, mucus in the stool, history of urgency, tenesmus.
So is it semi-solid stools? Is it more frequent stools? Is there urgency? Is there tenesmus? Is there blood or mucus? Then
history of any fecal incontinence.
This meeting is being recorded.
why fecal incontinence? Or any other? Blood and mucus you have asked. Okay. Anything else? Any perianal discharge, any perianal pain. Okay. So these are the questions you will ask for the patient regarding the diarrhea. Okay.
So what questions now? If it is small bowel, you ask for secretory. You want secretory diarrhea, or you want to use osmotic diarrhea. So any other questions that you'd ask now? If it is a small bowel, what are the other questions that you'd ask?
Supposing it's a small bowel diarrhea, what are the other questions you'll ask apart from stools? Patient has got a weight loss of 10 kgs for 3 months.
History of
Not able to hear you, ma'am. We are not able to hear you, please.
history of appetite loss.
History of anorexia, then
Fever.
then
You ask for the history of symptoms of anemia, like for easy fatigability.
fatigability, then
you ask for the history of nutritional deficiency markers, like if there is any history of decreased night vision, bony pain.
Most important thing, when there is a mucosal disease in small bowel, they develop glossitis. So is there any agusia? Is there any not able to, they are not able to eat spicy food? Is there a burning of the tongue?
So what questions will you ask for macronutrients and micronutrients? That's it. And trace elements. That's all. Only under 3 categories. No?
Okay. For macronutrient, you ask for the history of if there is any.
Don't say you ask. What I would ask.
I will ask for if there is any history of pedal edema, history of flatulence, excessive flatulence. For micronutrient, I would like to ask if there is any history of decreased vision at night time, bony pain, ecchymosis, petechiae.
Sir mentioned about glossitis,
anemia.
And there is a weight loss. So these are the questions that you should ask for, okay? And for secretory and watering, you have to ask for the stopping of certain specific foods. Food intolerance. Food intolerance is very important now. Food intolerance, maybe certain types of food cause increase in diarrhea. Do you think it's important?
Asthma?
Any type of food you think can aggravate the symptoms?
Yeah, history of intake of gluten can result in celiac disease.
And what else?
Any food allergy can cause, any food as an intolerance is there, like wheat for celiac disease.
Maybe get a lot of fruit drinks, no? Fructose.
What are other foods which can cause diarrhea?
Milk in lactase deficiency.
In which situations milk will cause diarrhea?
In lactase deficiency, sir.
Lactose intolerance, lactase deficiencies, eosinophilic enteritis, all these things can cause. So one is food intolerance. Then, so you said there is anorexia, there was features of glossitis. Something else you have said. You said something about starvation.
Yes, sir.
How does it help you? How does the
if
history of starvation help you?
If the stool episodes decreases with fasting, then it is usually a osmotic diarrhea. If it continues to have, despite the intake of, despite fasting, then it is a secretory diarrhea. To classify whether it is secretory and osmotic.
Fasting reducing diarrhea is predominantly osmotic diarrhea, and this is because of secretory diarrhea. Okay.
And lastly, would be requiring IV fluids. You know, the diarrhea is so intense that the person gets dehydrated. Then the need for admission and IV fluids. And then most important is 3 months. Is it intermittent? Is it episodic? Or it is continuous? That's also equally important. including some drug history.
Should she have large volume which requires IV hydration? So, but the loose stools are going for 3 months. So this is chronic diarrhea, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
What is acute? What is subacute? What is chronic diarrhea?
Acute is up to 2 weeks. 2 to 4 weeks is persistent. Anything which is lasting for more than 4 weeks is chronic diarrhea.
Yeah, 4 weeks. Okay.
Go on.
So she had watery stools
8
8
to 10.
times per day. Can you go on, please?
Yes, borborygmi was present. There was no abdominal pain, no blood or mucus, no perianal discharge, no vomiting. Anorexia was present. Nocturnal frequency was present. Weight loss of 10 kgs. There was no history of food allergies, no history of arthralgia.
Why arthralgia?
I don't get arthralgia in diarrhea.
Ma'am, in case of IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, celiac
Inflammatory
disease,
bowel disease, you can have diarrhea and arthralgia. Number 2,
celiac disease,
celiac disease can have arthralgia and this thing. Agree?
Whipple's disease,
Because yes.
Okay.
Any other?
ma'am, Behçet's disease,
Behçet's, yes.
Yeah, Behçet's.
Occasionally tuberculosis, but they're all monoarticular, and some of the infectious diarrheas like Shigella and all.
Mycobacterium tuberculosis, Ponsets arthritis can be there.
okay.
Any vasculitis, no? Vasculitis can produce arthralgia and diarrhea.
Not sure. Sir.
You know,
You can. Enoxaparin purpura can come with diarrhea. They can come with abdominal pain. They can come with blood and mucus diarrhea. They can also come with arthralgia.
SLE.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Did you elaborate on the food allergy?
Yes, sir. But intolerance to particular type of foods needs to be asked, like milk.
Wheat you said is for celiac.
Then in eosinophilic enteritis, can also have allergic to wheat, milk, soya, peanuts.
Shellfish.
Shellfish. Sir.
What are the 6 elemental diets you will tell them? Eliminating diets in patients with this one.
Milk, soya, seafood, wheat, egg.
Chocolates.
Chocolate.
Okay. So she was passing about watery stools. There was no mucus or diarrhea. It was large volume. Borborygmi was there, but there was no abdominal pain.
Oops.
No blood or mucus. No perianal discharge. No vomiting. No anorexia. No, and there was severe anorexia. She was not able to eat food. Nocturnal frequency was there. Weight loss of 10 kgs. No history of food and allergy. No arthralgia. She was not able to say whether starvation reduced diarrhea or not. Okay, she didn't really try that because she has been going on with this. Any other history you want, ma'am?
Sir, I would like to ask if there is, to find out the etiology of the diarrhea, if there is any extra-intestinal manifestations like oral ulcers, skin lesions.
There were no oral ulcers. There were no rashes.
Any history of fever, night sweats?
No fever. No fever. No fever. No arthralgia, I told. No eye changes. No extraintestinal manifestations.
Any history of
A lot of burning in the tongue. They probably had some glossitis, something like that. That's all.
Just keep in your mind, most likely it's a small bowel diarrhea.
So let us tell.
Just think of
Yes, this is-
the intraluminal causes, number 1. Then think of the mucosal disorders. Just think they put out that from the history.
Yes.
And mucosal disease, serosal. And then you have the systemic disorders that can present, including drugs. So just keep that in mind. Keep the anatomy in mind and just see if you have missed out anything so that you can get the etiology of it. So what are the mucosal diseases, the epithelial disorders, epithelium, that can cause watery diarrhea? Just keep that in mind. The brush border, there's no lactose intolerance. The brush border is out. Any epithelial disorders, epithelium of the small intestine that can present as watery diarrhea?
Uh,
Cryptosporidiasis, no?
no.
They're all,
Any-
yeah. So A beta lipoproteinemia is in the pediatric age group. You don't see the adults. The cryptosporidiasis is one. Intraluminal giardiasis is the other one, no? Giardiasis. So just keep, so in giardiasis, the motion will be more frothy, small quantity. It will not be continuous 8 to 10 times per day. So that is almost out. Strongyloidiasis, that is something that you have to keep in mind. The severe weight loss, painless diarrhea. So basically, when you're thinking about this, just think when you're dealing with malabsorption or you're thinking of a maldigestion. I think that is the first difference that you have to ensure that you get that history and then move on from there on. So epithelium is that. Then some in the mucosal, what are the disorders that can cause diarrhea like presentation?
Celiac disease, tropical screw.
So celiac will have regional differences. Number one. Number two, tropical. Very good. Then other disorders.
Uh,
What are the other disorders of the lamina propria that can present with this type of a diarrhea?
tropical screw.
That you already said, no? What are the other causes? You can have IgA, isolated IgA deficiency, CDID, ripples. All these are IPSID. All these are lamina disorders. So joint pain we've already discussed, fever you've discussed, extraintestinal manifestations we've discussed. A tropical screw, yes. So now in your short list, you may be coming down to maybe a tropical screw, maybe there's some epithelial disorder because it is we're not getting any further history. So what history would you ask for, say, cryptosporidiasis? Supposing you consider epithelial disorder, what history would you ask now? If a person were to have cryptosporidiasis, I've seen a patient, no, present just like choleric diarrhea, cryptosporidiasis, watery diarrhea.
Historically, two important things is we have to ask for a history of steatorrhea, number one. Okay? In a large volume diarrhea, steatorrhea is very important. Number two, I have said there is no abdominal pain. So can you tell me the significance of these two things? One is steatorrhea, no steatorrhea.
An absence of abdominal pain.
If there is a steatorrhea, what is it? If there is no steatorrhea, what is it?
Steatorrhea is basically fat malabsorption disease, sir. Steatorrhea occurs.
The malabsorption disease, or it can be maldigestion.
Digestion disease.
So if there is if it is an intestinal disease, what does steatorrhea mean to you? So where is the fat absorbed? Is it absorbed in the proximal small bowel or distal small bowel?
It's a distal small bowel, sir.
So that means distal small bowel is also affected. So there may be a proximal bowel and distal small bowel. And I've told that there is no abdominal pain.
What gets
So
excluded?
in a small bowel diarrhea and abdominal pain, large volume abdominal pain,
What gets excluded? What gets
if there is pain, if there is no pain.
painful, painless?
Muscular involvement is
The diseases, name the diseases where you consider abdominal pain and diarrhea and no abdominal pain and diarrhea.
abdominal pain and diarrhea can be seen in case of Crohn's disease or tuberculosis, IPSID, lymphoma.
Eosinophilic enteritis. So
Any other infection can produce abdominal pain and diarrhea.
strongly.
Strongyloidosis.
Pardon?
Strongyloidosis, sir.
No.
More of malabsorption. Then
What is an infection which can produce small bowel diarrhea? It can produce large bowel diarrhea. It can produce blood and mucus diarrhea. It can produce enteritis. It can produce perforation.
Entamoeba.
No. Large bowel diarrhea, it can produce small bowel diarrhea. It can produce large bowel diarrhea. It can produce
cause small bowel diarrhea.
enteritis. It can produce ischemic vasculitis. It can produce blood and mucus diarrhea. It can produce small bowel perforation. Cytomegalovirus. So pain could be something this. I think. So here there was no pain. So as you said, probably it's only the mucosal involvement, and there was no steatorrhea in this patient. Okay.
One question, when you get a severe weight loss, more with maldigestion or malabsorption?
It is malabsorption, ma'am.
Malabsorption. or maldigestion. Supposing the digestion process does not take place and all the triglycerides are passing out, versus a person where digestion has taken place and patient has got fatty acid but is not getting absorbed. So triglyceride versus fatty acid, where will you get a severe leak? Is a VT's famous question, exam question. VT, maldigestion, malabsorption.
I am here.
Always remember this.
That usually happens in chronic pancreatitis, where the patient, instead of having a severe watery diarrhea, may have loose stools, greasy stools, and patient even may pass droplets of oil and notice oil on the top of the water in the toilet, all those things. Okay. And of course, in a patient with chronic pancreatitis with the diabetes, which is long-standing, they may have a watery diarrhea or a classic steatorrhea. Dr. Chedra, can you define the classic definition of steatorrhea?
Steatorrhea is excretion of fat more than 7 grams.
No. How does it? I agreed. That is the biochemical definition. Clinically,
how was the steatorrhea manifest?
how will the patient complain to you?
Presence of a greasy or oily stools.
Okay, that is one type of presentation. But in patient with the mild digestion, like in chronic pancreatitis, that will be the presentation. What will be the presentation in a patient with a tropical screw or in celiac disease?
In a small bowel disease, yeah.
It's a classically described. No, steatorrhea is profuse, frothy, foul smelling,
Foul smelling, all odorous stools.
stools which are floating on the water. All those things are described. Those are all for malabsorption. That is the difference. Okay, over to Venk.
So here you think this patient has got a small bowel diarrhea or a large bowel diarrhea?
Small bowel diarrhea, sir.
So there's a small bowel diarrhea. Is it predominantly mucosal or muscular?
Predominantly mucosal.
It looks more mucosal. Why it is not muscular? It's not involved either the lamina propria or muscularis propria.
Because there is no history of, clinically there is no history of any abdominal pain.
Excellent. So abdominal pain. And why do you say this is a small bowel diarrhea?
Because the frequency, it is large in volume and the frequency.
It's watery, it's large volume, then?
And no blood mucus.
No blood mucus, then?
Associated with borborygmi.
There is borborygmi, then? Yeah, and she is not able to tell whether starvation reduced diarrhea or not.
Any systemic disorder that can present like this?
Pardon?
Systemic disorder? Systemic.
Hyperthyroidism.
Exactly.
So,
Yes.
what is your difference? So now we have come, this is a small bowel diarrhea in the patient. Now, madam said, why do you think she has lost 10 kilos weight? She's got malabsorption of nutrients probably. And second thing is, whenever there's a mucosal involvement, you'll have severe anorexia. Okay? So what is your differential diagnosis in a 43-year-old lady who comes to you with small bowel diarrhea of 3 months duration with a 10 kg weight loss? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Actually, just 1 second. Any endocrine disorders and NETs that can present in this manner?
VI coma. Glucagon.
Lipoma is a secretory diarrhea.
Yes.
Yeah.
Zollinger-Ellison syndrome.
Yes, that also can present in this manner. No, watery diarrhea, diabetes, drug-induced olmesartans, hyperthyroid state, Addison's disease. You have to keep this whole profile except for the submucosal and the muscular.
The differential diagnosis now, ma'am.
What are your differentials? So,
Can you now give me the differential diagnosis of this patient?
short list.
Differentials. First, I would like to consider infections as the first
So
differential.
infections producing malabsorption.
Giardiasis,
Giardiasis, yeah.
strongyloidosis,
Yeah.
scriptosporidiosis, isospora,
Opportunistic infections.
infections.
Okay.
Then tuberculosis.
Mycobacterium tuberculosis. But mycobacterium tuberculosis would have come with some sort of an abdominal pain. No? Malabsorption is reported in from PGI Chandigarh, but they always come with stricturous diseases and they have it. Okay. So these are broadly the infections. What else? What any other infection which can produce diarrhea?
No, that's all.
Leave out malabsorption. Small bowel diarrhea infections. You said Cryptosporidium, Giardia, Strongyloids, Cryptosporidium, Isospora, Microsporidia, then
Capillaria.
Capillaria philippensis,
Virus,
Viruses like cytomegalovirus,
CMV,
herpes simplex virus,
no, herpes and norovirus,
rotavirus.
rotavirus can produce. Any other infection?
opportunistic infection,
Where do you get opportunistic infections? In which condition?
In HIV, sir.
In
retrovirus,
AIDS. Can AIDS produce diarrhea?
Yes, sir.
How does it produce?
Because of the opportunistic infections like cryptosporidiosis.
Yeah, one is opposite infection. Second thing,
It can be due to
due to heart. Number 3, due to HIV enteropathy. What is HIV enteropathy?
it usually occurs if the CD4 count is less than 250.
No, HIV enteropathy. These are the differential diagnoses you will think. What is the other differential diagnosis of small bowel diarrhea? One, you said infections. Then non-infectious,
Like tropical sprue,
tropical sprue,
celiac, though it is rare in
celiac disease,
can it be IPSID?
is
can
it's
Crohn's produce small bowel diarrhea?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Crohn's can produce, but here they are always, when there's a small, they come with abdominal pain. Okay. What are the metabolic diseases Madam said can produce diarrhea?
Hyperthyroidism, Addison's disease, pheochromocytoma, glucagonoma, somatostatinoma, VIPoma.
All these things can produce more than. Okay.
Can it be diverticulosis?
Yes, ma'am.
Can diabetes produce small bowel diarrhea?
Yes, sir. Diverticulosis.
Can produce. No?
Yes.
You can get small
By,
Can any surgeries produce small bowel diarrhea?
by causing SIBO, it can cause
No. Tell me what is SIBO?
small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
What is the normal bacterial content of esophagus, stomach,
and
small bowel, large bowel?
Indian
You
baby.
know about this, okay? You just can't say SIBO and get away. So what are the surgeries which can produce SIBO or
Post
small bowel diarrhea?
post vagotomy, post gastrectomy.
Post vagotomy diarrhea is not this one. Post gastrojejunostomy, you can get a small bowel diarrhea post surgically. Okay.
Blind loop.
How does gastrojejunostomy produce diarrhea?
One is short bowel syndrome can occur.
There's no short bowel syndrome. This post GJ is not short bowel syndrome. Post gastrojejunostomy can produce
Due to
bacterial overload in the afferent loop, isn't it?
Okay, sir.
Then how else can a post GJ produce diarrhea? Supposing that diarrhea is very, very foul smelling and patient has undergone a GJ 25 years back.
They may not have seen it all. Gastrojejunal colic fistula.
Patient says that he vomits, it's very, very foul smelling, his motion is foul smelling, and he has undergone GJ about 20 to 25 years back.
Gastrojejunocolic fistula.
GJ colic fistula. Okay?
And then failure of admixture. You know, the efferent loop, the food passes
Yeah,
up
mixed.
the efferent loop, and
Oh, I
the
think,
pancreatic juice does not reach there. So failure of admixture. Okay. These are some of the mechanisms of post GJ status. Most important is the last one. 25 years back, patient has had a GJ and then comes a diarrhea. GJC is the only diagnosis with severe malabsorption.
So here, there is no abdominal pain. So generally, Crohn's, tuberculosis, all gets lost. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Patient does not have a steatoria. So that means there is no pancreatic malabsorption. Most probably, steatorrhea involves a distal small bowel. So it's very uncommon. Steatorrhea is not very common in celiac disease. So you are left with some other disease. And there are no patient does not have a skin rash. She does not have arthralgia. She doesn't have extra-intestinal manifestation. So by and large, we don't have inflammatory bowel disease. So basically, we're looking at something which is predominantly mucosal, right? He didn't have any symptoms of any small bowel obstruction, pain or vomiting. All she had was a borborygmi.
Yes.
Because borborygmi is a sign of which malabsorption?
Carbohydrate malabsorption.
Carbohydrate malabsorption. So that means there's no abdominal pain. That means there's no disease which is affecting that thing. So either we are looking at some parasites or some infectious cause, or sometimes non-infectious cause. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Patient is a known case of retroviral disease for the past 10 years. Had similar episode in 2019 on drugs since 10 years, not a defaulter. There's no history of any jaundice in the past. CT abdomen showed dilated CBD.
She went to another local doctor there, another local GI surgeon, and in Europe, and he used the CT abdomen they did. Why do you think they would have done a CT abdomen? Why would you have, she's a known retroviral disease and they have done a CTD abdomen. So what is it going in your mind? Why should you have done a CT abdomen in a patient who's got a retroviral disease now? So the whole gamut has changed now. It is a retroviral disease, last 10 years. One episode in 2019, she's not able to say what happened. And she is in heart on for 10 years. She's not a defaulter. CT abdomen would have been done due to why should I have done a CT abdomen on her? What is the role of a CT abdomen in this patient with a small bowel diarrhea?
Are they predisposed for tuberculosis? What are the things they're predisposed?
What is the reason they would have done a CT?
For tuberculosis, to look for lymphadenopathy.
Yeah, to look for any irregularity or thickening of the small bowels in a retroviral disease. In a retroviral disease, when somebody has got a small bowel diarrhea, you think of an opportunistic infection, you think of a HIV enteropathy, or you can think of lymphoma, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Or, as you said, MAC infection. Mycobacterial avium syndrome complex is also a possibility. But the CT abdomen showed, he was sent basically to me because they said the CT abdomen showed dilated CBD with enhancing wall thickening in the distal CBD. That's why she was referred to us. Okay?
Yes.
So now you have a patient with a small bowel diarrhea who is a known retroviral disease, had a similar episode like this. She has been on heart, and now CT abdomen shows a dilated CBD with enhancing wall thickening in the distal CBD. Now, do you have any other questions to the patient, please?
When do you get a dilated CBD in a HIV patient?
Basically, the patient shows some biliary obstruction. Do you have any other questions for the patient?
There is no history of jaundice, but any itching.
Yeah, correct. There's no history of pruritus. She doesn't have any symptoms suggestive of a hepatobiliary manifestation. So she doesn't have abdominal pain. She did not have.
Can you, Chetna, can you now link up the two, the diarrhea and the biliary system dilatation?
Ma'am, any parasitic infection which is involving the CBD as well as the lumen, like ascariasis?
Ascariasis, yeah. Ascariasis causes watery diarrhea.
Cryptosporidium, ma'am?
AIDS-related cholangiopathy.
AIDS.
Yeah, already she is a retroviral infection patient.
So she's got a retroviral disease, she's got a small bowel diarrhea, and she has got an enhanced wall thickening in the distal CBD with a dilated CBD. Okay?
Okay.
This is what she has. So she did not have any itching or anything. She didn't have any jaundice, she didn't have any itching. So This CT finding was incidental finding.
Okay. Sir.
Can you go ahead?
On examination, pallor was present. She was febrile, no icterus, edema. BMI was 17.6.
No icterus, no edema.
BMI was 17.6. No lymph nodes, no ascites, no organomegaly. Rectal
Are
exam.
you surprised that she didn't have edema?
Yeah, because weight loss is there, sir. So
One is she can have weight loss. She can also have a protein losing enteropathy. But why no edema? What's the reason? You may have such a profound diarrhea that we should be losing
yes, sir. She should have.
water, isn't it? Okay,
Yes.
that is very, very important here. So patient does not have edema despite having a retroviral disease for 10 years, has got a small bowel diarrhea, and she has got a significant weight loss of 10 kilos. Okay.
Yes.
And she has got features of carbohydrate malabsorption. You'll not be surprised that protein is not malabsorbed, but she might be losing off the weight because of the diarrhea. Why is it important that there is no edema now?
That means protein absorption
What is the therapeutic implication now in this patient? She may have hypoalbuminemia, but still she doesn't have edema. When you correct her malnourishment, you have to go very slowly because she can suddenly develop
refeeding.
syndrome. Exactly, refeeding syndrome. That is the implication of this. Okay. Okay, go ahead, madam.
The
BMI
next,
is 17.6.
no lymph nodes, no ascites, no organomegaly. Rectal examination is normal.
So in a retroviral, what is the rectal examination you can look for?
If there is any what, sir?
In a patient with a retroviral disease, in a rectal examination, what do you think you want to look for?
I want to look for perianal fistulas.
What causes perianal fistula in retroviral? Is it associated Crohn's?
I don't know.
Is it mycobacterial infection? In the mycobacterial infection, it is not Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It will be Mycobacterium
Avium.
avium MAC complex diseases. Okay, that is what you need to look for in these patients.
Yes.
These patients, these fistula can be a long tortuous fistula in these patients, especially in Crohn's. What is the other thing you can look for in anal canal in retroviral?
Warts, sir, anal warts.
Very good, anal warts. Supposing patient has got a bleeding PR.
Yes, sir.
Kaposi sarcoma.
Kaposi sarcoma.
All these things we need to look for. Now I have told you that a patient has got a retroviral disease and she has come with a diarrhea, and when you do an anal examination, this is what you need to look into it. Okay. So rectal examination is normal. She has got anemia. She had mild glossitis, which I did not record. She was afebrile. There were no nodes, no ascites, no rectal examination was normal. You are right. There was no perianal fistula. There were no anal warts, and you get
no Kaposi sarcoma, no mass.
No Kaposi sarcoma. Anal warts is common in which group of patients with retroviral disease?
Not.
MSM, male to male sex. Okay. This is common, right? Can I go to the next slide, ma'am?
Yeah, I think, yeah. So,
Anything else you want to say, ma'am?
investigations. We start with investigations. Yeah. What investigations do you want now?
So now,
Patient is not a diabetic. There's no hypothyroid.
no, patient is not a diabetic, no comorbid, is not a hypertensive.
Nutritionally, the calorie intake is low. and
So,
deficient in
can you
calories. Yeah.
I
can
want,
you summarize and tell me what is your differential diagnosis now?
sir,
There is
differential.
no pain, there is no steatoria. She has got only no aside, no thing. Everything is normal. She has got a low BMI, and she is retroviral positive, and she is on heart. Now, just list me the differential diagnosis in this patient. A patient with retroviral disease coming to you with a small bowel diarrhea, no abdominal pain, and this one.
So first differential, I would like to keep opportunistic infections. Second,
So opportunistic infections. Okay, now opportunistic infection number 2.
HIV enteropathy disease per se.
What is it in the examination you would have very aggressively looked for in this patient? You are happy with the liver and spleen or something else? I deliberately did not write it. What other organ you'd be looking for? Patient has got a CBD, lower CBD narrowing
Yes.
and dilated CBD.
Gallbladder.
Gallbladder, yeah. How does gallbladder get affected in retroviral? They can become a part of cholangiopathy or they can develop acalculous cholecystitis. Okay, so these are things. So you would have lived for a gallbladder. Okay, now you are saying it's a small bowel diarrhea with a small bowel diarrhea, incidental detection of a lower CBD narrowing, enhanced wall thickening with dilated CBD. Now, what is your diagnosis? We did not feel a gallbladder here.
Okay, sir.
No organomegaly. So your differential diagnosis for a small bowel diarrhea in a retroviral disease in this patient. Based on the history, you need to think of the history and give me the differential diagnosis. Don't run a differential diagnosis. Very relevant to this patient.
HIV enteropathy with CBD involvement.
Now, you tell me first about the small bowel diarrhea.
Opportunistic infections, sir.
The one is opportunistic infections. Number 2,
HIV enteropathy disease.
HIV enteropathy. Number 3,
Drugs which she is taking.
drug induced. Number 4,
Uh,
can this be a lymphoma?
a lymphoma is also possibility, sir. But there are no lymph nodes.
There are no lymph nodes, so there was no abdominal pain. Can this be Kaposi sarcoma? Okay. Now she's got an incidental now a dilated CBD and a lower CBD stricture.
Can it be an ulcerated form of tuberculosis? In HIV,
Yeah.
like ulcerated.
Tuberculosis is a great possibility here. You don't need to get masses, especially if it is atypical tuberculosis. You can develop malabsorption, you can develop diarrhea. So atypical tuberculosis, opportunistic infections, this one and this thing. Right. Now,
This context,
what is your thoughts on this lower CBD narrowing, enhanced wall and dilated CBD?
Sir, can it be a stricture?
You
Low,
got to tell me, ma'am. There is a
Papillary-
stricture. There is a lower CBD narrowing with enhanced walls and dilated CBD. So what are the possibilities there?
AIDS cholangiopathy.
HIV cholangiopathy, okay.
Or biliary stricture secondary to that of infestation by the microorganism.
No, that's what you said, HIV cholangiopathy. HIV cholangiopathy is either related to opportunistic infections or unrelated to opportunistic infections. The broad term is AIDS cholangiopathy. AIDS cholangiopathy can be due to opportunistic infections. Then non-opportunistic, non-infectious cause of AIDS cholangiopathy can be?
Cholangiocarcinoma.
No. Lymphoma is a possibility. Atypical tuberculosis is a possibility.
lymphoma.
The third thing is patients with AIDS can also have chronic pancreatitis. And that can also produce distal CBD stricture. Okay? But only thing is this wall is enhancing. So that means here we have a retroviral patient with a small bowel diarrhea, which you said could be opportunistic infections or HIV enteropathy. Then you have
Tuberculosis.
again an incidental dilated CBD with enhanced walls, which could be HIV cholangiocarcinoma, which could be due to opportunistic infection or non-opportunistic infection. This is how you need to discuss this case. Okay. How do you investigate this patient?
I want a complete hemogram, liver function test,
Hmm.
CD4 count,
Hmm.
stool examination.
Elaborate on the stool examination. What are all the things you want to look for in the stool?
I would like to look for ova, cyst.
So patient is in your ward. How are you going to send the stool? So you want tell me what all you want in the stool. One is
Ova, cyst.
Macroscopy, no?
Macro-
Macroscopy. What you see is it
macroscopy. What do you want to see for?
frothy,
Water, the blood.
Is a blood or mucus? Okay. Microscopy. You want to look for ova. You want to look for stool cyst. Then
If there are any trophocytes, sir.
you want to look for trophozoites. Then
trophozoites of which parasite?
trophozoites means what's your diagnosis?
Trophozoite of which parasite?
Giardia.
So how common is Giardia in HIV? You would have seen HIV enteropathy in your training, no? How common is Giardia in HIV? It's not very common. Okay. If you have a blood and mucus diarrhea, maybe trophozoites is good. But it's not very common in Giardia in patients with HIV. Okay. So you look for trophozoites, Giardia, you look for ova, you look for cyst. What else you look for? Supposing you see larva.
Strongyloidosis, sir.
Yeah. Be very sure, man. So if you see larva strong lights, what else you want to do? You are the consultant and your registrar says, what is it I should look for in this patient? So ova, cyst, trophozoites, larva.
One minute. You can classify it as what are the samples you send to the pathology department, biochemistry department, and the microbiology. That's it.
Yes, sir.
Keep this in your mind.
So opportunistic infections, how do you look for?
You look for modified. You ask for a modified acid-fast stain.
You should look for an acid-fast stain to rule out
Cryptosporidiosis, isospore.
cryptosporidiosis. Okay. So one is used for a cryptosporidiosis. Okay. Then you're going to do a fat globules.
Yes.
Then, so how will you send the stool?
It should be sent in a clean, dry, tight lid container. Ideally within 30 minutes of collection.
You should ask your registrar to immediately go on because you need to do the acid fast. So how many days you will send?
3 samples, sir.
2 to 3 samples. Why 3 samples?
Because yield of organism increases with the 3 samples. With 1 yield, it is
only with 2 samples.
Okay.
Third sample, it does not become. By 2 samples is 97%, doesn't become 100%. So 2 samples, 2 days. But most important thing is acid fat, and it has to be given by the registrar within about 30 minutes. Okay? So you want to look for a stool. So you want to look for CBC. You want to look for a stool.
Just know the differences between secretory and watery diarrhea, that is the biochemistry bit. And then you have the microbiology bit. And then you must know how to do a Sudan-free staining for the fat globule. So these are the other things. So just keep all these in, not in this particular case. So therefore, if you just think that what are the things you should sample, you should send for biochemistry, microbiology, and pathology, you will get all your, because once you say biochemistry, then immediately you realize. So you do a secretory and osmotic, get the osmolarity of the stool done. Sometimes we do have a problem. You're not certain it's secretory or osmotic.
Okay. So in this patient, you will ask for these stool examinations, you will ask for a CBC, then
liver function test,
So what do you expect a liver function test in this patient? In this patient?
Raised alkaline phosphatase and GGT, sir.
Okay, raised alkaline phosphate, gamma GT. Then enzymes?
Uh, enzymes might be raised, sir.
Might be raised, might not be raised.
You mean globulin?
He doesn't have this thing. What will happen to the albumin globulin?
Uh,
Patient has lost 10 kgs weight loss, not been eaten.
albumin is increased in low albumin.
What do you expect the albumin to be? Low, high?
Low, sir.
Low, and globulins may be raised. Okay. What else you want on this patient?
Uh,
The CT abdomen which they did was a good CT. We discussed there. It did not show any abnormal bowel wall thickening, but it did show this one. So now you have done the LFT. What else you want on this? This patient has come, retroviral infection has come with diarrhea and incidental cholangiopathy. What else you want in this patient?
MRCP, sir.
Count?
Before that.
You want a CD4 count?
CD4 count.
So you need a CD4 count by. Tell me, why do you need a CD4 count? What is the importance of a CD4 count? It comes with a diarrhea in retroviral infection.
Opportunistic infections are more likely to occur if the CD4 count is less than 100, sir.
Then, so if the CD4 count is 450 and the patient comes with diarrhea, what are the causes? When the CD count is more than 400, generally it is bacterial diarrheas and Mycobacterium tuberculosis or Iberian complaints. When the CD4 count is less than 100 or less than 120, so you need a CD4 count there. And what else you want?
What else?
So what do you expect the HIV viral load in this patient?
HIV viral load.
Yes.
Will it be less than 40?
No, sir, it will be more.
It will be more than? It will be more than 40. So you need a HIV viral load to see whether the patient has got an adequate control of HIV viral load. Because control of HIV viral load is the first step in treating all the infections in patients with retroviral. Okay, this patient has not defaulted at drugs, but still she has developed an idea. That means, what does it suggest to you?
That means
She has not defaulted the drugs, but she has still come with you at diarrhea.
Yes.
Why do I need HIV? Supposing her HIV viral load is high, what does it suggest to you?
It is the disease progression.
It's not a disease progression. No, she has been taking for 10 years. No? In 10 years, she has had only 2 episodes of something. Possibly she could have developed a drug resistance, isn't it?
Okay.
Drug resistance. Okay. So you need all these things. So let me finish off all this before I come to your other investigations. CBC, yeah.
Hemoglobin is 8.9, MCV is 78.8. It is iron deficiency anemia. Total counts is 6,500 with neutrophils of 50% and lymphocytes of 39.1%. Peripheral smear is normocytic hypochromic anemia. Sir, eosinophils?
Eosinophils is 4%.
Urea is 30, creatinine is 0.49, electrolytes are normal, amylase is 16, lipase is 24, liver function test.
Bilirubin is 0.4, direct is 0.2, SGPT is 13, SGOT is 19, alkaline phosphatase 269, gamma GT is 337, total protein is 6.9, albumin 3, globulin 3.9. Urine routine was normal and CA99 was sent. That was 30.3. Normal, abnormal?
Abnormal, sir.
30.3, CA99.
Normal, sir, normal.
What is the cutoff?
37.
37. So what do you see here? That means there is a hypoalbuminemia thing and there is an elevated alkaline phosphatase and elevated gamma GT.
The viral serology, hepatitis B and C were negative. COVID PCR was negative. Viral load was 13,400. CD4 count was 20. Stool routine, it was negative for parasites. Modified AFP stain was negative for cryptosporidium. Stool for fat globules was negative.
As you said, the stool parasites was sent for 3 days, negative for parasites. Modified AFB was negative for cryptosporidium. Stool for fat globules was negative. HBS agent HCV is
Negative.
negative. So if somebody has got HBsAg HCV, is it very important to check HBsAg HCV in patients with HIV?
Yes, sir.
So supposing this patient had a liver enzymes of 140 and 130,
Yes.
even though HBsAg were negative, what will you do?
I would like to ask for IgM.
IgM won't work, there won't be things. So you need to ask for a HBV
HBV DNA levels.
HBV DNA level or HCV RNA levels, we need to ask. Okay? So that is what you need to ask for this patient. But here the viral load was elevated. CD4 count was only 20 international units.
Okay.
So negative paraffin, modified AFB, negatives for scriptus, stool for fat globules, negative. So that means you have a small bowel diarrhea, negative for parasites, no bowel wall thickening. There was no bowel wall thickening. There was enhanced wall thickening in the CBD. Viral load is elevated. CD4 count is 20. Anything else virus I should have looked for? Should I look for a CMV?
Cytomegalovirus.
How do you look for CMV?
CMV by on histopathology, sir.
Viral serology, how do you look for CMV?
What do you look for
For
CMV?
IgG, IgM or something. What is the problem with CMV? You and I will be positive, no? 90 to 95% of people will be positive for CMV IgM or CMV IgG. Okay. So what's the best way of looking for CMV for an opportunist infection in a patient who is immunocompromised?
To look for the copies, CMV copies, sir.
CMV DNA, do a PCR, okay? To look for a CMV DNA and CMV PCR in this patient. Okay, what else you know? Now that all are negative, next what do you want? How do you want to evaluate her diarrhea?
Sir, can you do enterography, sir?
That's what they did a CT, and CT they said there's nothing. They've already done a CT, and CT said there's no abnormal mucosal thickening or anything.
What will be the role of dural biopsy in this patient?
What else you want to do next? This patient, she's in your ward.
Upper GI scopy and D3, D4 biopsies.
Upper GI scopy and deep dural biopsy. Then he's got diarrhea.
Yes, sir.
Do a jejunal
Upper
aspirate.
GI scopy, deep dural biopsy, and you want to see what?
If there is any lymphoma, sir.
Sites, no?
Madam, lymphoma, I already told you there is no pain. There is no abnormal thickening of the small bowel by the CT. All she has now is a cholestatic picture. She has got chronic diarrhea and she has got negative this one. You are thinking of an opposite infection or a HIV enteropathy, and you are looking at something which is obstructing the bile duct. So you tell me what are the infections in the next site of investigations. One, you said you want to do upper GI scopy, D2 biopsy. Agreed.
Yes.
What do you want to look for in upper GI scopy, D2 biopsy? What are things you want to look for? What do you expect? When you put in a scope in this patient, What do you expect?
Mucosal folds scalloping.
How will the stomach look in this patient? No, they may be having atrophic gastritis, no? They may be achlorohydric and atrophic gastritis. Number two, you want to
Candida.
look at the duodenum. What all you things you want to look for in the duodenum?
Mucosal fold scalloping.
No. First is blunting of the mucosal folds or scalloping of the duodenal folds. You want to look at the villi.
Villi pattern.
How do you look for a villi pattern? Endoscopically in a white light.
Sir has discussed this earlier.
What will you do? Do a simple maneuver which you can do and look at the villi nicely.
What he mentioned about this last time.
What can you flush in? You flush in a lot of water, okay?
Water.
When you flush in a lot of water, the villi will come up and then you will be able to see all the villi. So you want to do an upper GI-scopic D2 biopsy. You want to do a colonoscopy.
So it's a large bowel diarrhea,
Okay, she's got a diarrhea.
small bowel diarrhea. So
You don't want to do a colonoscopy. Small bowel diarrhea, you can always take an. Where is the best results of organ infection? Do you get in duodenum or ileum? You get in the ileum is the best way to find out the thing. So we did a colonoscopy and a ileoscopy to look for this one. Okay. What is the advantage of doing an ileoscopy in this patient? Madam told one diagnosis.
tuberculosis.
Excellent. Ulcerated tuberculosis without too much of a stricture, you can develop, or you can take some biopsies to look for opportunistic infections. Okay? What opportunistic infections you will pick up in either a duodenal or a ileal biopsy?
You mentioned, no, just mentioned.
You just now told, no? We can pick up giardia,
Giardia,
develop
cryptosporidium,
strongyloids, we can develop cryptosporidium, you can pick up.
cyclospora, isospora.
You don't get to ice, you can develop CMV. You can pick up CMV in this. Okay.
Move on.
Then what do you want to do for this distal ileal thickening and dilated CBD? You said patient has got HIV cholangiopathy. Any other investigation you want to do?
MRCP, sir.
MRCP, right. Now let me finish off this. So this is the endoscopy. Showed a mild atrophic gastritis, but here you can see the duodenal folds are all completely thinned out. Okay, thinned out, completely flattened. This was done on 7/5/2021. She just came to us recently. We did late in the evening because we had to do it in the last because she was a retroviral. Okay. And we have taken deep neural biopsies in this patient. We did a colonoscopy. We went into the ileum and ileum showed some few small, as madam said, small ulcers. And we took some biopsies from there. Then you want MRCP. Okay, ma'am. Can you tell us about that MRCP here?
MRCP showing a dilated intrahepatic
See a
biliary
dilated
bile duct,
bile duct. And what is this?
pancreatic duct, sir.
Yeah, is it dilated or normal?
Not normal, sir.
Normal. And then is there an IHBRD?
Yes, sir. Intrahepatic biliary radical dilatation.
Yeah. Do you see any changes in the IHBRD?
There is a irregularity.
Correct. Very good. There is irregularity of the IHBR in this patient. There is irregularity of this IHBR, and you will see that there is a dilated CBD, and this area looks little thickened.
Yes, sir.
This area is very thickened, and you can see that there is a small lower CBD stricture. Okay. So now, can you classify HIV cholangiopathy.
The 4.
What is the common presentation of HIV cholangiopathy? The first common thing is papillary stenosis. So papillary stenosis is of HIV type 1. If you have,
dilated CBD.
no, not dilated CBD. If you have only intrahepatic biliary radicals, it is type 2. If there is irregularity of IHBR, type 2. If it is papillary stenosis plus IHBR, it is type 3. If there are multiple strictures involving the IHBR and CBD or long strictures, it is type 4. So basically this is
Type 4, sir.
type 3. There's no stricture in the CBD. It's only type 3. There's a papillary stenosis. What is papillary stenosis? Where is anatomically it is located? Is it the lower CBD or anywhere else?
Lower part of CBD, sir.
No. What do you call that anatomical segment? Duodenal-ampullary segment. You should know that is the papillary stenosis. Why is it important? You can't, if you go and take a biopsy here, nothing will be there. So when you want to take a biopsy, you should take a biopsy in the duodenal-ampullary region. So this is there. So what do you want to do next? So we have done the colonoscopy. We have sent the biopsies, both the duodenum. We have sent the ileal biopsies. Now it may take about 3 days for us, and we did an MRCP. MRCP is this. Next, what do you want to do? Now she has got an elevated alkaline phosphatase. She's got a lower CBD stricture, and she's got a type 3 HIV cholangiopathy.
ERCP with biliary stenting, sir.
ERCP we want to do. Then what else you want to do?
We want to take a biopsy from that region.
Which region?
From the duodenal-ampullary junctional region.
Duodenal-ampullary segment of the CBD you need to take. How do you take?
I don't know, sir.
What will you do? How will you relieve this obstruction? So you need to do ERCP, you have to do a sphincterotomy. Sphincterotomy. So how do you take the biopsy from that area? There are 2 ways. Either you put a spyglass, but keeping a spyglass is very difficult there. But right now you have some biopsies which can go through the guide wire. So over the guide, you put the biopsy over the guide wire and take biopsies from the ampullary duodenal stenosis. So this is what we did. See, you can see the biopsy forceps going into this place and then did it. And here you can see that there's a dilated CBD as well as beading of the radicals. Then we stented this patient, right? Stented the patient. So we did a sphincterotomy. There was a papillary stenosis. There was a beading. And then we took biopsy. This is the biopsy forceps which is going right over a guide wire. Pull it back and exactly took the biopsies. Okay? So this is how we have managed her. Now, patient has got a low CD4 count and she's got a high viral load. So what will you do with the heart?
This drug resistance. So
possibly it's drug resistant. So the ID specialist changed the medication. Second thing, we were not very sure with the compliance because her husband was also positive and both husband and wife didn't want the children to know that they were retroviral positive. It is unfortunate. Husband is a school teacher. 8 years back, he got blood transfused for a road traffic accidents. And he didn't realize that he was this thing. So the children now have grown up, but still they don't know that both the parents are retroviral. So this HIV cholangiopathy is type 3, and this has been taken care by doing a sphincterotomy, biopsies, and now an intermittent stenting. Yes. This is the duodenal biopsy. This is the ileal biopsy. Let's come to ileal biopsy. Okay?
Yes.
So what is this? 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 Retroviral infection.
What is seen on the surface?
Giardiasis? Giardiama?
This is not actually giardia. Giardia will be always be in intervillous spaces. This is just stuck to the epithelium.
Just epithelium. I told you, no, the epithelium. Which are the parasites? Cryptosporidium.
It is cryptosporidium. So
Epididymitis.
the moral of the story is, even if you don't get by stool, I think you should always take biopsies, because sometimes cryptosporidium is this will be seen stuck to the epithelium. So this is cryptosporidium which was done.
Okay.
So this, what you see here is some amount of intrarenal lymphocytes. There are plenty of cryptosporidium stuck to the epithelium. So in intervillous spaces, you get cryptosporidium. Sorry, you get giardia. Epithelium, you get cryptosporidium. Where will you see strongyloids? In the epithelium or somewhere else?
Which is invasive, no?
Yes. Strongyloidosis.
Pardon?
Strongyloidosis is invasive, sir. So we'll see in the epithelium or lamina
Below the
propria.
epithelium, it can even be in a lamina propria.
Lamina propria.
Then where will you see CMV? CMV can be picked up inside the epithelium, or CMV generally causes
Ulcer.
vasculitis. So around the vascular organs, you will be able to do a CMV. So this is the bile duct biopsy. And what do you see this here? And this is immunohistochemical staining. What do you see here? Owl-eye appearance. What is it?
Cytomegalovirus.
Cytomegalovirus, very, very close to the vessel in the bile duct, in the ampullary region. So what she has is cryptosporidial, retroviral infection, cryptosporidium in the small bowel, and HIV cholangiopathy. HIV cholangiopathy can be due to an opportunistic infection, or it can be HIV cholangiopathy per se. So what she has is a retrovirus infection. She has got a low CD4 count. She has got an elevated viral load. Possibly she had a drug resistance. Now she's got a small bowel diarrhea which is due to cryptosporidiosis, and she has got CMV induced cholangiopathy. So your diarrhea could be opportunistic infections or HIV enteropathy. Or HIV cholangiopathy could be either due to CMV, cryptosporidiosis, and what else can cause cholangiopathy?
Tuberculosis, pancreatic disease.
Microsporidia. Microsporidia. I told a differential diagnosis of enhanced wall thickening. But if you are looking at the opposite infections producing cholangiopathy, there are only three. They are that Cryptosporidium, CMV, and Microsporidia. Small bowel diarrhea could be cryptosporidiosis, you can see in the ampulla. Giardia, you can see intervillous. Microsporidia can be seen in epithelium. You can see strongyloids in the lamina propria. And sometimes you will see CMV predominantly around the vessels, because it can always cause, CMV can cause vasculitis, it can cause enteritis. So it can also produce sometimes vascular injury. Okay. So
How will you treat this
for our
patient?
first diagnosis is retroviral, small bowel diarrhea of cryptosporidiosis, and at the same time antecedent she has got this thing. Always remember that when the CD4 count is below 100, you can always get multiple opportunistic infections. So how do you treat this patient?
For cryptosporidiosis, nitazoxanide.
For cryptosporidiosis, no treatment works. The best treatment is you have to give heart, improve our immune restitution, and then cryptosporidium generally
BT?
Venkat, you have gone offline.
Somebody's gone offline.
Still, it must be. Is am I audible?
You're audible.
Okay, I think Venkat is still found to be logged in, but maybe bandwidth is low. Dr. Venkat, can you hear me?
Let me just shut down.
No, I can hear his sound. Maybe some local issues. Until he comes back, I think he has gone out and he will have to log in again. Until Professor Venkat comes back, in the stool examination, some more things to be checked, especially if it's a pediatric diarrhea, we have to look for reducing substances, that is pH. That is, you can look for reducing substances as well as we can check the pH. Okay, that actually helps you to find out disaccharidosis deficiency. And one must also look the whether it's an inflammatory stool, that is RBCs and pustules are present. Okay, then occult blood is also important. That is also part of, because if any of these are present, that means there is a mucosal integrity is affected. Then, of course, if you have sophisticated facilities in a patient with diarrhea, you can also ask for a calprotectin, because calprotectin will give you an idea that there is again mucosal integrity is affected and pustules are in the stools, or neutrophils are there in the stools. Okay, and giardia is very unlikely to be found in ileal biopsy. Okay, it is the giardia is generally found in the proximal GI tract, especially small bowel. So in the ileal biopsy, you don't generally find it. And giardia cyst are generally seen. Tropocytes of giardia are seldom seen on a stool examination. Okay.
Including strongyloid. Even strongyloid is rare.
Strongyloids have
Larvae may be seen, but uncommon. Just less than 70% is positive.
One may find the ova is very difficult to find. One may find only larva, and it is very often found out by aspiration of the duodenal fluid and looking for larva or something over, and then biopsy. And the duodenal aspiration is also important in patients with the chronic diarrhea, and you aspirate and also look for giardia. How does giardia look like under light microscope? That's a
And the aspirate you can also check for bacterial.
Okay, that can be sent for bacterial culture.
What do you see? How do you see the giardia with a light microscope?
It is a pear structure.
Your voice is not audible.
Okay, please repeat.
A pear-shaped structure with two nuclei, sir.
Okay, you may not see all such details in an ordinary microscopy, but it's a movement.
It's a darting movement.
It is the classic description is falling leaf. If you ever observed a leaf falling from a banyan tree, okay, you will find it's undulating. It just like a mango or a coconut. It actually falls slowly, undulate. And in the stool, of course, when you examine, sometimes Trichomonas vaginalis also may be there as a contaminant, especially in females. So that you find out by the fast movement. Okay, it is like a bandicoot movement. It is very fast. Okay, that is how they differentiate the movement between these two parasites. Okay, and again remember, giardia is not a common superinfection in HIV. Okay.
LVK is joint.
Okay. Power to LVK.
Sorry.
One case. We have just this one case.
Suddenly this power is gone. Okay.
Check out this case for management and then we can close down.
Oh, yeah. So we were just discussing about the management and share my screen.
Yes.
So we were discussing about the management. So cryptosporidiosis, generally we don't have I don't see the presenter.
Yes, sir.
Cryptosporidium, mostly you have to reinstitute the heart, but the drugs which can be used are
Nitazoxanide.
nitazoxide, parmomycin, then
Sir, trimethoprim, sulfamethoxazole.
no, you can use azithromycin, parmomycin, and nitazoxide. You need to give for 28 days. But the best thing is you need to give always, you need to put them on heart and improve their immunity. Otherwise, cryptosporidium is a very, very lingering problem. The problem with cryptosporidium is what? They can go for severe diarrhea, dehydration. Sometimes it can be death also. CMV, how do you treat CMV in these patients?
So, ganciclovir. IV ganciclovir.
Ganciclovir, then
Foscarnet.
and valganciclovir. Now the commonest thing we give is valganciclovir in these patients. So generally we put her on, we chain the heart for her. Then first we treated with cryptosporidium. And now we will restart because sometimes CMV can come with restitution of this one. So we thought 2 weeks we'll give cryptosporidium and then restart her on valganciclovir. So please look up the dosage of valganciclovir. Please look up the dosage of valganciclovir and please look up the dosage, how do we treat cryptosporidium. Okay. So this is my find. So the learning objectives here are definition of a small bowel diarrhea, definition of a large bowel diarrhea, what is the significance of pain, what is the significant non-significant pain, what is the significance of weight loss, what is a broad classification, what are the broad differential diagnosis. In particular with retroviral diseases, please look up all GI manifestation of retroviral disease, starting from odynophagia, dysphagia, GI bleed, hepatobiliary manifestations, which can have hepatitis B, C, pylorus hepatis, sometimes, and then you have biliary manifestations like a HIV cholangiopathy. Okay, then all the diarrhea is very, very important. You should know which sort of diarrhea comes when the CT count is more than 150, what diarrhea comes when above 60. How do you go about and looking for these opportunistic infections? Most important. And important is that even though your stool is negative, it is important that you look for this in tissue biopsies. So this is what I think all the learning objectives. I just want Madam and Varghese Thomas sir to add on their comments.
LVK, so I think we just conclude with this one case. Can you just finish off with the test of malabsorption? I think with this you should finish off the test of malabsorption.
You just want me? Can I run through the next case immediately? Just another.
Take time, no? It's already 9:25, so I think we just have 5 minutes.
Just another 15-20 minutes. I have a case.
Varghese, I think we can just hold on to one case and finish off the test of malabsorption. No? Because once you start,
also another case of small bowel diarrhea. So,
if the candidates are willing, we may continue, but otherwise,
so it may take a little long time. No? Once you open, it's already 9:25.
Okay, and
this case has been,
I think we will take a Pakka case of chronic diarrhea with the malabsorption, where we have to do all the D-silos, fecal fat estimation, and jejunal biopsy, all those things.
I think we can have it as a next session itself, no problem. You want it on Thursday? LVK, you're okay on Thursday? Or
okay. This is I have one more case which is small bowel. You told me painless diarrhea, so I thought we'll take.
No, I know the case would be interesting. What I'm saying is, once you start, you go on for 1 hour. At least 40, 45 minutes. Let's not hurry with it.
Whatever you say, whatever.
Let's not hurry, no point in hurrying. VT, what do you say? I think just hold on.
We will do it leisurely and cover on the entire aspect of malabsorption.
If you want, you can even finish it on Thursday. You have no problem.
But LBK, are you free on Thursday?
I'm okay.
We are supposed to have a...
Lockdown, it's not a problem.
So Thursday, then we finish it off. Small bowel.
Okay.
BT.
Now, yeah, okay. Now, I just want to add that when you look for a stool, there are something which are not usually done, like stool osmolality, and very often I find students fumble when this question is asked, because this
That's
is
why I
practically,
mentioned that. That's why I mentioned that.
it is not done. One most important thing is that you have, if you are not doing the test immediately, you have to centrifuge it, get the supernatant, and send the supernatant for osmolality as osmolality and sodium and potassium. And if you are not able to do that, you have to put it in -70 freezer, because otherwise bacteria will proliferate and act upon various unabsorbed materials and increase the osmotic abilities. And then you should know how to interpret. Normally, the sodium and potassium into 2. That means it will account for the anions and cations. That is why we double it. There will be almost equal, or there should be only a difference of 50 millisieverts. If it is more than that, that means actually there is osmotic diarrhea. That means things which cannot be explained by this calculation. So please read up that, because unless you read it with a lot of time, you will not understand it. So that's also important.
Actually, I think Thursday is okay. If you can take it, I can take the next case where we have the full malabsorption
Yeah.
workup.
Have it. Let's finish it. No? So the small bowel malabsorption, maldigestion will be over.
Yeah, I have already prepared a case or chronic diarrhea definition. Small bowel diarrhea, large bowel diarrhea. Initially, when you start off any case with diarrhea, in the exam, we'll start off like what is large bowel, what is small bowel, then we'll discuss differential diagnosis. The moment then the history says that you're going to come and say she's retroviral, then we go on that way. Then that incidental thing, so you need to know all the manifestations. You should know when do you get bacterial infections, when do you get opposite infections, why is the CD4 count important? Importantly, when you do biopsy, sometimes you should also take a dural aspirate and look for these things. And you should know which organelle is sent where. So you should know that giardia is there intervillous space, cryptosporidium is attached to epithelium, strongyloids, all those things should be pakka. You should know all those things, because I think since we have a lot of HIV cases, this will be asked in the exam. And treatment of retroviral. Please never forget about the drug-induced diarrhea in these patients. Nowadays, with the prolonged lifespan of HIV/AIDS patients, you are having more of drug-induced problems. And when you have a cholangiopathy, how do you treat cholangiopathy? So these are all the reading objectives in this patient.
Yeah, another area of weakness which I have found in students is that they are not able to identify the ova and cyst of various these organisms when it is projected. Like for example, when a GRD is presented, when a biopsy of duodenum showing strongyloid is presented, the ova of pituitaries and other things, they should identify on like a spotter. And if they don't diagnose it, then the rest of the discussion will be going in a totally different direction. So please read up all those things. Okay, with this, thank you, Jayanti ma'am, for joining us and giving your valuable comments. And we close and meet you on Thursday, same time. Until then, goodbye. Good night.
Good night. Bye. Well presented, Chetna. Good.